Hi, everyone, and welcome back to today's Love Transformation class. And this is a conversation that I'm really excited to bring to you today. If you're here, I'm guessing that the majority of you are really looking to create a connection and a beautiful, intimate relationship that's deep and meaningful and perhaps beyond the ordinary, what we would call perhaps an evolutionary type relationship. And I'm excited to introduce you to today's guest expert because she has a breadth of understanding and personal experience in the realms of what we would describe as things like twin flames and karmic relationships, and works with a lot of women around their beliefs around partnership and soulmates and connection. Oh, and it's a juicy conversation. So I'm really excited. Thank you for joining us, Alison.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Super happy to be here.
Let's kick off by sharing with the audience, and obviously if they'd like to read professionally all of your experience and credentials, they can pop below the video today and there's an outline of your bio. But I'd love for you to sort of share with our audience how you sort of got into this field.
No problem.
Yeah.
So I was minding my business. I used to live in New York City. I was working in a corporate environment. You and I think, have quite a bit in common as far as our sort of background, right? Professionally. So I was working in luxury hospitality. I was working in big hotels in New York. And my mentor from college actually passed away. He was like I don't really consider him like a guru, but he really was my guide, spiritually. And I've been connected with him for over 10 years. And he passed away. And when he passed away, I'd always been inclined sort of psychically and spiritually. My dad sees spirit, my grandparents do. Like, it's in the family for sure. So I was always interested and kind of fascinated by that, but I didn't think that I would ever in a million years do it as a career. Literally never. I was like, oh, that's for fun. That's a hobby. So when my teacher passed away, I really did start having a spiritual awakening. I started having dreams of him. He was telling me, you need to go to Miami. Like, I thought I was losing my mind. I was married at the time. And I remember telling my husband, I'm having these weird dreams. Larry's telling me I need to leave my job and go to Miami. And my ex was like, no way, I'm not going to Miami. So that was the beginning of a huge life transformation. And I mean, I feel like I've come 365 degrees. I just feel like it's been massive. So I ended up leaving New York. I listened to my intuition like a crazy person. I moved to Miami unemployed. I can't believe I did it thinking back, but moving there was the beginning of all of this. So when I moved to Miami, it was serendipity. I found an apartment. I walked like 2 blocks down the street. I found a job at this hotel. Like, it all just unfolded so easily. And I was like, okay, obviously this is meant to be, right? So I ended up meeting this man when I was in Miami, and, it was just a series of things. Things started to happen. I started to get energy healing treatments. When I moved to Miami, this guy was like seeing all these things around me. So that was the beginning of all of this, thinking like, maybe this could be something professional. Maybe I do have some things that I could use here. But when I met this man and ended up getting into a relationship with him, I just felt like, I don't know. I felt like I changed dimensions. It was like, you were here in this life, and it's like, you're going to get plucked out of that old life and you're going to get put over here, like fast tracked. It happened so fast. Thinking back, I don't even know how I did it, because it was really rapid. Like, within the course of a year, my entire life changed. I got a divorce. I started studying massage. I was doing Reiki. I got certified in a few different things. I literally left Miami again. So it started there with him. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. When I met him, I thought, oh, this is really nice. It's so different than my marriage. This is somebody that I have, a lot in common with, and is spiritually aware and interested. And my ex-husband just wasn't, he was a soulmate, but we weren't growing together spiritually. So that's why I wasn't happy anymore. So this just really felt like a good fit. And then the roller coaster started, and I was like, oh my God, this is bringing up a lot of things within me that I didn't experience in my marriage, things that I haven't looked at. I was not aware of a lot of my beliefs around love, right? So that was the relationship. And that was, I don't know if I need to tell years, but it's like 8 years ago, 7 to 8 years ago that this happened. So this has been now subsequently the entire, how my career has unfolded after that experience. And we were together for a while. And then that relationship ended at that time, you know, because then it's come back around. But at that time I thought, wow, that was like I got sent to space and then I had to come back to Earth and put all the pieces back together because I felt like everything broke apart by being with him. So that was really how it started. And about maybe 2 years after we had ended that relationship, I started my YouTube channel because I was getting a lot of visions. I was meditating a lot at that time. I was really feeling like I needed to go within. I was having a lot of trouble with jobs in Miami. I kept losing I mean, this is like unheard of for me. Getting fired. It was like the universe push to run my own business, which I always wanted to do, but was terrified because of finances. And after a divorce, it was really hard. So, and I know you can relate.
For our audience who hasn't actually who hasn't come across this term twin flame, or hasn't really come across an understanding of what the definition of that is, can you share with us what is a twin flame?
This is open to lots of interpretations, but for me, the terminology and the things that I was receiving in those meditations and what I've physically experienced is this. It's like the closest match I feel to maybe your soul's sort of blueprint of what you came here to do. This is just how I see it. I don't think there's a definition, but for me, it was like, this is the person that is going to help catalyze you into the real life purpose work that you're meant to be doing. It's the person that has, I would say, triggered me the most, but not in like toxic, abusive ways, because there's a lot of confusion there. So it was never that. It was really just deep emotional uncovering of things that I had never considered, that I hadn't looked at, but there was a lot of love there. So, you know, a lot of people think, oh, well, it's really, really difficult. It's probably my twin flame. I feel that it's a soul contract, I feel, with a person that you came to really redefine what loving and relationship means, or how we can evolve within relationship in a more conscious way. It's really based in love and respect for each other. So sometimes we're really magnetized to people, but it's also really unhealthy. And I'm not saying that you can't have some unhealthy stuff come up with this person, because you can, but ultimately it was never like toxic. Like, there are just some people that you gotta go. Like, you gotta just be like, okay, I'm attracted to this person because it's a major wound. It's more like a wound mate than like, it's still a soulmate. I think we're all soulmate. You and I are soulmates. Like, we're all in this kind of big soul family. But as far as the lessons go, there is this magnetic sort of pull to grow and learn. Even if you're apart from one another, you're still sort of, I just see it as almost like having a parallel experience. Maybe the physical manifestation looks different in our lives, like the physical circumstances, but the lessons I have found between the two of us we're really learning like the same lessons, which could be the case for lots of relationships. But this relationship, the term twin flame came to me in meditation, and I felt that it was because I think twin flames have the primary purpose of balancing the masculine and the feminine energy, of it being really like the primary purpose behind the connection and the imbalances at first, being able to really understand what our masculine and feminine energy is, and how our life force is something that we can use really consciously. To me, that's the real underlying thing of twin flames from my experience and what I've seen over the years. When we first got together and we were intimate, I had like a Kundalini awakening. I'd never experienced this before. I actually physically felt the energy the first time that we were together go all the way up my body. It was almost like a rocket ship went through my body. It went woo, and it was like a jolt of energy up my spine. And then after that, I was already intuitive and experiencing things, but it just blasted open. And it never happened again like that. I'd never experienced that previously. It really stuck out in my mind. Like, what was that? And afterwards, yeah, a lot of energy coming through, a lot of spiritual experiences, a lot of just opening up to energies in general. That wasn't the case prior to us getting together physically. So that was a major thing. I think also the years that have gone by that we're still mutually wanting to grow together, even though we separated. He went into another very difficult relationship, but I feel necessary, for both of us. I needed time, he needed time. But there is this mutual desire to grow together that I've just never had with anybody else. Everybody else, it's like once it was over, okay, maybe a year after you're lingering, you're thinking about the person, but never in my mind have I ever thought about even going back together with somebody from my past. It just never even occurred to me. It wasn't desired at all. In this case, we didn't want to split, but it just had to happen, and it's still there all these years later. So that really sticks out to me, because I thought if it were one way, that would be one thing, but this is a mutual thing. And he's been working through a lot of his stuff, and I've been working through mine. So there is this like teamwork that's happening apart from one another without having to bring each other into the drama. And then I feel it's almost like you go apart, and then it's like convening later when you're in more balance separately.
And when that first phase of that relationship came to a conclusion, how did you deal with that? How did you manage that? You mentioned it wasn't until a sort of afterwards that realization of perhaps what that person was to you became clearer. But was that a particularly painful ending? How was that experience?
Devastating. I can't even put into word. I felt like my destiny got stolen. I've never felt this before. I was really, really low. Like, I remember being sort of chronically depressed for about a year. It sounds traumatic thinking back, but it was devastating. I mean, I really felt like, it's weird. I've been with other people before. I'd felt a strong attraction. I felt like, oh, this really feels good. I want to do this. But this felt like, this is my destiny. This is like part of my life purpose, and it's getting ripped out of my hands. And it's really complicated what happened, and there's like other people involved, so I don't really want to get into all the details, but let's just say that it was a difficult situation. There were some financial issues and some things like that had come up, and the situation, it wasn't good. Let's just put it that way. The situation that he's in really was like a business arrangement more than anything that really went badly. Like he was like, this is not a good idea, but now I'm a little bit stuck, and I feel like I don't know how to get out of it. So I just believe in karmic lessons. I believe that we have sometimes really challenging stuff, and we have that person that we have to do it with. And he said to me, I feel like this is my lesson. He said it, like he knew. He was like, I really feel this is my lesson. You're not supposed to be part of this. It was just really, for both of us, it was just really, really difficult, because it didn't feel right. It was like, we're supposed to be together, but it wasn't the right time. It just wasn't the right time. And I've never experienced that before. And neither had he, because he was just like, I don't even know what to do. And I started to attract people that were having similar experiences, not using that terminology, but I realized like, okay, maybe it's time after about 2 years to help people, because I realized people were starting to come to me, and I felt like I had moved through a lot of the grief. So I was able to come from a different perspective, because really it opened my eyes to just loving someone unconditionally, acceptance, compassion, and these lessons that I hadn't felt I learned before in the same way. So once I got to that place, I felt more able to offer some advice to people. And that's where the business started. But nope, it wasn't easy at all. It was about a year and a half of heavy duty grief, like brought up everything that I hadn't dealt with in my life around my parents, my father, my mother, everything. It was like it dredged it up, and it just kept coming. When is this going to be over? It got easier over time, but it brought everything up after that, because it was the ultimate abandonment, the ultimate like feeling rejected. So even though that's really not what happened, but it brought all that stuff up.
I can definitely relate to all of that story and to the pain and I'm sure many of the women watching, the pain of having to process what life might be like without the one person that you thought was your person. I certainly had some kind of sort of very psychic sort of connections, experiences of having similar dreams, of having similar messages, of knowing how, something being across the opposite side of the world, and and having similar experiences as well. And all those years ago, that was how I actually found you, because I wanted to try and make sense of and understand what it was, and was twin flames the right definition or the right understanding of what my experience was. And I really, really resonated with that, and it brought some peace to me for a time.
Right.
However, what I want to dive into is what can sometimes happen when we surrender to this idea that there was that one person, right?
Right.
And okay, so right now we're not in physical presence with each other. We're not actually in relationship.
Right.
What I found for me was that wasn't really serving me after a while. It was a
No.
beautiful way to resolve some of the grief and some of the pain and really create an understanding of it and make it into something beautiful for me. But it was keeping me feeling stuck. And so I took an alternative path and came to some different understandings, which I'm actually going to share in my own love transformation class. But what's been your experience with the women that you've worked with that have had a similar twin flame experience, but then are perhaps now feeling, well, where to from here?
Right. Yeah, that's what I had to go to that space too, because I had nothing, I had no information. I mean, and this person's not online. They don't have an online presence. So I had nothing. So it took, it was 3 years before I got any news, actual news. Well, yeah, let's say like the full picture, it took 3 years. So in that time, I absolutely had to let go. I mean, I had to think to myself, that was an experience. And that's exactly what I did. I got to the place where I was like, this was a great experience. Maybe I came up with those terms because I needed to relay this information to people. By the end of, let's say 2016, I said, maybe that's it. Maybe that was the purpose of it. And I was okay with it. I thought that was it. You know, I fulfilled the purpose of that connection. I still felt things, but I was like, well, you just got to accept, you know, it's time to move on. And that's when it came back around. So that's the only reason why I continued, because I really thought that was the end. Now, for some people, that doesn't happen. And so it always comes down, I feel, to, can I see the lesson? Have I integrated the lesson? Because sometimes people say the energy is not going away. I said, have you truly learned yet? Have you really integrated what that person is showing you? Because the likelihood is, if you have integrated what that came to show you, it will dissipate. It will get softer and softer, you know? So, and it probably won't come back into your life. So there is a little bit of unknown factor with this, but ultimately it comes down to, I feel, acceptance and allowing an experience to be what it was in the moment. Like you said, a beautiful, maybe vehicle or a container for a year or however long, to learn some lessons about love and loving yourself and what really you feel you deserve, and how you might be using that to not receive love, how you might be using that as a crutch to not be open again because it was painful. So I had to go to that space as well. So I do feel like for most of the women, it's like ultimately you got to let go and let God, or whatever the terminology would be. It's about really acceptance. I think it's acceptance. It's the process of grief, because acceptance is the final stage of grief. When you're in acceptance, I feel you're in the energy of allowing. And from there, anything is possible. Because if you're really allowing, the likelihood is that you're going to attract the exact thing that you need next to grow and learn, which may or may not be a partnership. Maybe you don't need one right now. Maybe the lesson is you need to be alone for a while. So, but in acceptance, you're okay with the variables. You're okay with not knowing exactly what's supposed to come next. You've kind of settled into more peace around, it is what it is right now, and I can be okay with that. So that was ultimately where I felt I went with every client. And that was my process. I had to go there. So again, if it circles back around, I was like, maybe it's a test. Maybe this is just a test. Except that was, you know, almost 3 years ago. So it's not, you know, it's keep going. I thought, well, just keep trying to see, what is it teaching you right now without having a lot of expectation around what it's supposed to be. That's not easy, but it has been the experience. So that's, you know, different people go through different things. And if it doesn't circle back around, then you probably, you know, have you learned what it's come to show you?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, one of the things I wanted to talk about was on our quest for this beautiful soulmate love, we have had so much social conditioning, even from when we're a young child, this Prince Charming, this knight in shining armor, this concept that there is the one for us, right? But what are your views now about holding on to, and it does give us a beautiful sense of hope, no doubt, that there is one person for us to experience, you know, the ultimate romantic experience in this lifetime. But what are your thoughts now about this, about holding on to this ideal that there is the one, a belief that it is actually a truth for us or not?
I mean, personally, I feel in some cases, maybe you have like a soul sort of contract with a person to evolve. But I also believe in free will. I believe that we're constantly evolving and changing. And I believe that the one is, you are the one, like you are creating your relationships. So I believe in the space that, for example, I feel I'm in now. If it didn't work out with him, then I believe I will create a very conscious and aware relationship with another person. Like I believe that that is absolutely possible. I don't believe there's one, I don't feel it's that limited. Do we have maybe a specific soul purpose with someone? Could be. I'm not the universe. I don't know. I do believe that it could be very likely, at least, you know, and for example, I work with women. I have a good friend of mine who just recently ended a very challenging relationship and met a beautiful guy 2 weeks later in the elevator at work. It can happen, and it's great. It's going amazing. I have been single for years and gone on lots of dates. Nothing has worked out. So I don't know, you know what I mean? Like everybody's got a different, but I believe that it's possible to have many ones. I believe that the more aware you are, the better your relationships are going to be, and the higher quality type of, you know, dynamic you're going to bring into your life, because it's really a reflection of wherever you're at the time that that relationship can form. So yeah, I don't believe that there's only one person, but it could be that for some people you might be kind of drawn back to one person, but I wouldn't want to limit anyone to that belief. Oh, there's only one person. How would we even know that, you know? But it is very, very romantic. And, you know, like I said, the only reason I continued with any of this is because it just kept coming back as a mutual thing. So I was like, I'm just going to go with it. But I tell my clients all the time, I don't even know what's going to happen in my own life. I still don't know. I have a feeling, I have sort of a knowing, but I don't know. Ultimately, it's fine, because I figure if it's not that, it's something else. It will be fine. It will be good, because the better you feel, you know, the better you can create from that place. So that's really what I believe now after all. But there was a period I didn't think that that was true. And I was like, no, I can't be with anybody else. And then I tried to open myself up more and more. And although that person hasn't come into my life, it's okay. You know, I went on some lovely dates. I met some really nice guys, and I thought, there are beautiful, sort of aware people out there. So really, whatever's kind of vibrating into your experience is wherever you are in that moment. So I just started to trust I can create the experience that I desire. Just focus on your energy and how you feel, and go from there.
And for a lot of us, yeah, we know that we should be feeling okay, but our practical experience isn't necessarily aligned with that. And we are going to have a conversation about what happens when we do feel a little bit stuck or blocked after the ending of a really powerful relationship like that. We still feel a really strong connection to someone that may be stopping us from moving forward. But I just wanted to circle back to an important thing that you mentioned about, essentially about being mindful that you were half of that partnership that co-created that beautiful experience. Because I think a lot of women, they often attribute the amazing feeling and the amazing connection they had with that one person. And then when that one person goes away, they take that connection away with them, and not acknowledging that they were the co-creators of that, and that that's possible to do that again, because we're always sort of like looking in the rear vision mirror and reflecting on the better, and the best. Right. Because we can't see what's ahead of us. So it's easy to feel like the best I've had in the past.
Look, that was the pinnacle, and it'll never be better than that. When really you're constantly, we're always in this process of evolving, and you know, hopefully we're growing and we're changing some of our behaviors. But yeah, I 100% believe that you can create a beautiful dynamic with somebody else. And like I said, although I never went there really romantically with somebody else, I went on some really great experiences, had awesome talks with people, thought to myself, okay, you know, there's really nice guys out there. Just didn't, the physical part, I don't know, you know, I'm really conscious of the kind of dynamic I want in terms of how sacred it is to me now, because it didn't used to feel sacred to be sexual or to have relationships. I felt like I just didn't see it in the same way. I wasn't promiscuous, but I certainly didn't have the same awareness, and I didn't treat it in the way that I treat it now, which is really important to me, because someone in your energy field like that you're taking on whatever is going on with them. So I don't want to take on everybody's stuff. So ultimately I decided, you know what, there's a lot of things I can do with that energy. Started to study, tantric meditations and other things to realize, like you said, this experience can, I can have those feelings even on my own. I know it's not the same. There's nothing more beautiful than being physically with a person that you're really connected with. It's amazing. However, there's a lot you can do, with that energy when you're conscious and you're using it, sort of practically, and you're like, okay, what can I can create with this. I can feel really good. I can, I started doing Kundalini yoga, not religiously, but I was like practicing, and I still do practice some of that, some tantric meditations and things that was using my breath and using my energy, and realizing I still have a lot of energy and I still feel very sexual. And it's like, it didn't die. But for a while, I really struggled with that too. I think we all do, because we're taught like that's the only place that you're going to feel desirable or sexual or whatever is in romantic partnership. So that's been a huge takeaway from this, as far as being in that energy and in that power without a partner for years now. And really, and choosing to not have a partner, because I decided at some point, you know what? I just want to really be with myself and see where I can go with this. And then if something happens, okay, if somebody comes and, blows me away, then I'll rethink that idea, but it just didn't happen that way. So I decided at a certain point, after a few experiences that didn't feel good, I was like, just don't do that. Just be with yourself. So it's been very powerful, actually. Now I'm feeling ready to kind of delve back in. But for a while, I think it was really purposeful and really eye-opening to realize, like, when we give that much power to another person, how much we're really missing that we can create on our own, or whatever, maybe with somebody else.
And there's a lot of insight as well, and we're going to move into, in a practical sense, what happens. But in terms of tying into the overall theme of the event and addressing some of the more significant or powerful blocks that we experience into creating healthy partnership, we're going to explore how this feeling like there is that one person, or having a particular connection with someone, doesn't necessarily serve us in terms of being able to move forward. But Alison, why do you think sometimes it's almost easier for us to stay in that place rather than having the courage to step out and perhaps release those attachments?
There's so many reasons. I mean, just the pain that came up from my initial experience made me so afraid to even open up again, because I didn't trust myself. And honestly, that was at the core of it. Now that's completely different. But at the time, I was like, if I could allow myself to get into this experience and this happened, I can't be trusted. So I just was like, forget it. Don't go there, right? And this was my belief for a while. And then I started attracting men with a lot of mixed energy. They were nice guys, but it was off. And I was like, okay, you need to look within and see what about you. Like, I wasn't trusting my own judgment. And that was my practice of learning to trust my judgment. So later, let's say like 3 years after that, I started to go on a few different dates. I waited. I really had a period where it was easier. I just said, it's easier for me to just be alone, to not open up to anybody. I won't get hurt. It'll be less stressful. That's fine. And that was okay for a while. And then I started to feel like, okay, now you're just closed off completely. You've gone to an extreme. You went from extreme openness to extreme shutdown, and it didn't feel good. So I thought, let's practice going out and testing your judgment. So you're just going to go for fun with no expectations. You're not necessarily looking for the man of your dreams. You're just going to have an experience. And I went in with that attitude, and I had completely different experiences. Like, the men were so open and so nice. And I was like, this is because I don't have any expectations. I'm not looking for someone. I'm not like trying. And the less you are looking, the more they're like, whoa, what are you about? Because most people are, as they get into their, 40-ish, or like really, a lot of people are really, really, I need a partner. So going in with not that energy, going in with a very different energy of really being open-minded helped a lot. It helped me to experience what it felt like to just receive without an agenda. So that was a good practice as well. Again, I'm not in a relationship right now, but I gave it many tries, I was like, try to be more open, because I am absolutely of the, branch of women that I could just be alone for years and years and years, but that's not ultimately what we want. Like, I don't want that. And I was like, it's too comfortable to be alone. Get out of your comfort zone. So I started to do a little bit of that, and that was nice for a while, and then it just kind of started to feel contrived, and it wasn't really, nothing was clicking. I was like, maybe I have more work to do. I don't think there's any like specific answer. I don't want people to feel that they are broken or like, oh, you have to constantly be working on yourself. Relationships are vehicles to grow in, whether we stay in it for a week or a month or 10 years, like they're places to see ourselves and to experience ourselves in another, and to, you know what I mean, for things to come into conscious awareness. So I think it's great. You know, it is really about, do I trust my judgment? Do I trust myself? And can I, like you said, have the courage to perhaps have a different kind of experience? And maybe it doesn't have to be a long-term partnership. Maybe it's just going to be a few dates, and that will be fine. Maybe it won't even become intimate. Maybe it will just be, you know, just less expectation in general. It is a practice, however. Like I really had to force myself to do that because it was out of my comfort zone. I didn't want to do it, but I'm glad that I did because it showed me you don't have to be so scared. You can trust yourself now. And if there's a big red flag, you're going to see it. And luckily there were no huge red flags. It just wasn't the right person. But that was the good thing. It's like, look, you've grown. You're not attracting that stuff anymore. So yay, you've graduated. You can be a little less afraid, right, of having new experiences. Yeah. You'll spot the stuff quicker the more you trust yourself.
So what advice, let's talk practically now about what advice you might have, because I know for a lot of the women watching that have perhaps had an experience where they might have felt that they've met their soulmate or twin flame before, and then we have this conflicting kind of views about it. We want to still believe that that soulmate, deep, intimate connection is possible, but then if we've already met that person, you know, does that mean, like, where does that leave us now? How do we balance those two, I guess, conflicting mindsets about how to approach our love life moving forward after this sort of experience?
You know, with the women that I've been working with, there's like a mixed bag. So some people are like, I think you really have to go with your, and I know that this is hard for some people, to go with really intuitively, what are you being guided to do? Because that is a thing. Like we each have our own guidance system. And sometimes it can feel, no, it's distorted. I don't know. I don't trust it. Like some of the women that I work with are really being guided to be open right now, to go out and to experience and to date and to really open themselves up. And I'm like, absolutely go with it. If you feel the desire to do that, do that. Some of them are like, I really don't want to. I'm afraid. I'm not ready. Honor it. There's nowhere we need to get to. If we went through our whole life and it just never happened, but in each moment we're trying to honor ourselves, I don't think that would be a failed experience. I think that everyone's life looks a little bit different, and really genuinely what I advise people to do is to create more time to create a connection with your kind of guidance system, however that looks, whether it be a meditation or yoga or just quiet time, or maybe you're journaling or whatever it is, just being kind of with yourself, and you get messages. So, you know, however you do, maybe you get them through a thought or through your body, or you have a dream, but just try to encourage people to get in touch with their inner guidance, because ultimately that's all that matters. I can tell you something, you can tell somebody something, but at the end of the day, I feel that deep down we do know what we need if we were really listening. But the practice of listening is a practice. That's how I feel. Because there's no single answer, right? There's no solitary experience or one way to do it. Because how do we know really what's meant for us, other than try to listen to yourself, try to trust yourself a little bit more, and to do your best to keep an open mind about what your experience is going to look like, because miracles can happen. Like I said, my girlfriend met someone in the elevator, literally a week. She didn't think that was going to, she was like, I'm not ready. She was still grieving, and who knows, but it's really a healing experience right now for her. And she went with it, and it took her totally out of her comfort zone. So I say, try to be open, because anything can happen. You can't force it, but if it happens, listen to and her gut was telling her, get out of your comfort zone, try. And so she did, and it's going really great. She's having a good time without it being heavy or serious, or, it's just nice. She's like, I'm learning to be in the present moment. She's like, I've been practicing that on my own, and now I'm practicing it with another person to try to just take it one day at a time. And it's hard, because we're like, want to jump right in, like, let's get married, let's do that. She's like, I'm really, truly, and he's allowing me to just be here now, because that's his attitude, and it's lovely. And she's just having a new experience. So I think that's it's hopeful because it's like that can happen. It really, I think it depends on our willingness to be open to new things. And it's okay if we do bring someone in that ends up being a little bit like, oh, why did I do that? Because it's still an opportunity to learn something. So I don't see that there's anything wrong with any of it. It doesn't matter, you know? We learn as we go.
What about for a lot of women who have this experience, if they feel as though they have such a strong connection with someone and they have perhaps a deep knowing, you know,
Right.
wherever that comes from, that this is their person, and I guess the strength of their attachment to that person almost creates an equal and opposite effect. So there's a lot of leaning in and, you know, pursuing and engaging and efforting energy, but it's not reciprocated. You know, how do we manage that?
My advice is really for most people is don't get involved in those cycles because I'm not involved in anything right now. Like, that experience is happening, but we're not even in community, like nothing right now. It just is existing, you know, as like, if this is meant to come, it will not be in those dynamics, because that was exactly the thing that had to stop, was like, for example, third party dynamics, when the person is with someone else and they still want to communicate with you. To me, that's a no, because are you really honoring your energy there? No, you're a feeding tube. You're basically, you're siphoning, you're giving someone your energy, and what are you receiving? You're not. So there are certain patterns that I think need to be stopped, because they're just not healthy. They're not serving. If you say, I really want a reciprocal, mutual relationship where two people are both feet in, looking in the same direction with a similar vision, then those dynamics do not serve that value. So,
and I love you share about the importance of understanding the difference between when we're envisaging a future and waiting to call someone new in, the difference between holding space and waiting. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, because this is the place where I would say most people get caught, because they're like, how do I? So the way that I break it down, or the way that I like to talk about it, is in how it feels. Because to me, waiting feels like I have no power here. I'm powerless. You might be blaming the other person for you feeling stuck. It feels anxious. It feels like you are literally powerless to move forward. It's like based in fear and control and power, the feeling of powerlessness, which obviously is an illusion, but it can be really powerful. You can be like, I can't change this. That's how I feel waiting. Receiving, or being in the energy of like holding space for something, to me feels like, instead of the energy like this circulating in a circle and not going anywhere, I see it more like a river. It's flowing. You know, you're not feeling anxious. You're feeling like, I'm okay if I don't know exactly what's around the corner. I'm going to be, instead of the log in the river, which creates a log jam, this is how I see it. Because I think waiting is like being a big tree in a river. And trees get stuck on the edges and they start blocking the flow of the water. Whereas like, if you're the river, to make kind of a silly example, but it's true, water is flowing around all the obstacles. Water is moving. Water is like, it's okay. It's impermanent. Things are changing. I'm okay with that. So you're really in more of a state of acceptance of the unknown, because I think that ultimately is what holding space is. It's being here now as much as possible. We're human, so it's normal to think about the past, or to try to think about the future and plan a little bit. And you can have a vision for the future. Who says you can't have visions? It's how does it feel? I think it comes down to resistance. If it feels like it's constrictive, if it feels like it's making you feel tight in certain places, or you're getting anxious about it, then that's probably resistance, right? Versus releasing some of the resistance, you're more open. So that's how I break it down to like, how does it feel in that moment? I think that's probably the key.
Yeah, and not only in that space does it feel more comfortable and feel more optimistic, not having that resistance, but you are opening yourself up to more opportunities and more potential for new connection, right?
Of course. And also, I think you start to see it reflected in your life in other circumstances, because the more open you are, people will be like, wow, all of a sudden, all this synchronicity is happening, or this door is opening, or I got this like offer, or I met this new person and it feels so connected to what I want. So that's how you know you're on the right track. Like, it's all of a sudden things start to come together and you're like, okay, I think I'm in more of a flow right now. So paying attention, you know, to our emotional guidance system, I think it's really important. Are we ever going to get it perfect? No, I mean, we're human. It's like this desire to be like, it can't ever go wrong. Or if I go off track, I failed. Like, no, let that go too. It's okay. You're going to hit the bump sometimes. It's fine. You can realign. You can pivot back. I love Abraham Hicks' work because that is like, contrast is how we learn, which means sometimes we're going to have experiences we don't like. We're going to create experiences that we really don't like. It's okay. How does it feel? Maybe you can just pivot a little bit away from that and move towards a better feeling, and things can start to flow more for you. So I just think it's like a learn as you go sort of thing. But that work to me really, really, like, that saved me. I listened to them every day when I was in a really low place, and it helped me a lot.
Now, you've got a really beautiful free gift to share with our audience. Can you tell us a little bit about what they're going to be able to access for their daily download?
Yes, ma'am. So we have, totally in the realm of this whole conversation of waiting versus holding space, I created a free webinar. It's about 30 minutes. So in that webinar, I'm going to go more in depth on, again, how do we start to understand those blocks, like those subconscious blocks to receiving love or to receiving, that energy in our life. I go into the sort of distorted masculine and feminine energies, what those might look like actually in your life, how they might be manifesting. Again, how the sort of waiting can manifest, how the more receptive energy can look, and some practical sort of tips. And there are some questions, some things to ponder and ask yourself that I go through in that webinar as well. So that should be really helpful for people, at least to start to get an idea of what this all can actually start to look like in your life, and to be able to pick out, oh, maybe that's what's actually happening here, as opposed to being like, I have no idea. Like, what does it even mean? So that, that's the free gift.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful wisdom and your story with us today. And for all the viewers, I'd really encourage you to connect with Alison. So her Facebook, YouTube and Instagram are all linked up below the video, and make sure you click the button underneath our video today so that you can access the free webinar and get some really juicy, practical guidance on how to shift some of those energies. And yeah, thanks again. Is there anything you'd like to add before we finish up, Alison?
No, I'm just very honored to be here. I'm so glad that you reached out. I'm really, it was a pleasure to share this. I really, truly hope that it helps somebody connect some dots, to this, because what I really want to see is more women loving themselves in their power, attracting amazing things into their life. Like, ultimately, that is priceless. That's the most fulfilling part about all of this, is to see people have the things that they really desire manifest in their life.
Absolutely. Beautiful words. And it's been so lovely to have this conversation with you today. And thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow for tomorrow's Love Transformation class. Any questions, just jump over to Facebook and we can chat further over there. Bye for today.